A very good morning, everyone. These are the four principles that are remaining out of the principles of farm management, and this is the part four and last part of the second unit. So let's start them one by one. And what are their uses? Why do we study them? And first one of these is principle of equimarginal returns. It is also called as principle of opportunity cost. And what does it tell us? It tells us how we should use our limited inputs in the best possible way. Best possible way means maximum returns, maximum money. So if a person has unlimited quantity of inputs, there is no problem with him. He just needs to choose what kind of crops can he grow according to the climate of his area, and he should keep on extending its their output until the point average returns are greater than the average cost. So there is no decision problem at all. But if a farmer has limited inputs, like most of the farmers, there is a allocation problem because they have some options and they are confused where to put this limited input, which which allocation will be giving them maximum returns. Okay, so this law says you should be investing your limited input in such a way that marginal returns from the last unit of that limited resource is nearly equal in all the alternatives. Okay, let's understand this thing by an example. Our budget is 320 rupees and nitrogen cost is rupees 4 per kg, and per bag one bag is of nitrogen is 10 for 10 kgs, so we are having 40 rupees cost of 40 rupees per bag. Necessarily we can afford to buy only 8 bags, so we need to decide how we should be using these 8 bags. By this table we have an idea if we are going to add one bag of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 bags of nitrogen in three options that we have of paddy, three varieties of paddy, Gautami, Vasisht and Pankaj. This much of money we are going to get, okay, out of the output that we are going to get. So how should we be using these bags? First bag naturally should be used. First 40 rupees should be spent for Gautami variety because it is going to give us 195 rupees, and none of the other ones are going to give you 195 rupees. Second bag here, third bag here, fourth bag, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. This is how we are supposed to spend our entire 8 bags because this much money we are going to get. Let's say marginal returns from the last unit of our resource is nearly equal in all cases. It should be nearly equal. So the marginal returns here is 99.20, and then it is 128.80, then it is 108.00. As you can see, these are not nearly equal at all, but these are best possible equal, because let's say if you're not going to invest the last unit in Gautami, or you choose to invest it in Vasisht, what you will be losing is 12 rupees. Okay, so the total for these nine, this allocation, this previous allocation according to the marginal returns, the total money that you would have got is 1126. And let's say if you had chosen not to spend the last unit here, but here you would have lost 12 rupees out of this 126. Your returns would have been not maximum. They would have been good, but not maximum. They would have been 114. So this is how you are supposed to spend your money. The marginal returns should be nearly equal, as far as equal. Okay, this is what it means. They need not to be exactly equal, but they should be having the least possible difference. Okay, this is how you should be allocating your limited input. First unit Gautami, second Vasisht, third Gautami, Pankaj, Gautami, Vasisht, Pankaj, Gautami. This is how you should be spending your 320 rupees, and this allocation will give you 1126.40 rupees, because the marginal returns in the last unit of limited input you have are nearly equal. Okay, if you're going to spend it according to this rule, you'll be getting the maximum possible returns. Now let's move to the next example. This is principle of comparative advantage, and why do we study this? Let's say there are two regions, one is Hisar and one is Fatehabad. Okay, wheat and rapeseed and mustard, we are talking about winter season, that is Rabi. There are two options in both the areas. Either we can go for wheat or rapeseed and mustard. These are income, total money we are going to get out after the sale of the produce, expenditure for raising the crops, net returns, that is this minus this is equal to this, net returns, that is returns after we have paid for all our expenditure. So as you can see, in wheat we are going to get, if a farmer who is cultivating wheat in Hisar is getting net returns of 27,500, here in Fatehpur 19,000. Rapeseed and mustard 7,500 here in Hisar and 6,000 in Fatehpur. So naturally a farmer who is having his land in Hisar will be better off cultivating wheat and rapeseed and mustard than a farmer who is in Fatehpur, because he is going to save this much of money. This might be due to several reasons. Okay, it is partially because this area is more congenial for wheat and the cost is less. Some other reasons. So this law of absolute advantage means region A has absolute advantage in cultivating wheat and rapeseed and mustard than region B. Okay, region A has absolute advantage. When we are comparing two regions, we are talking about absolute advantage. But let's see, now the farmer knows that he is better off cultivating, the farmer of Hisar is better off than the farmer of Fatehpur. But let's say he has 10 acres of land. So which crop he should grow out of these two possible outcomes? He should be going for wheat. More, he should be giving more and more area to wheat than rapeseed and mustard. Why? Because for a rupee he is going to invest, let's say he invests 1 rupee in wheat, 1 rupee spent in wheat, he is going to get 2.22 rupees in return. And 1 rupee spent in rapeseed and mustard, he is going to get 1.5 rupees. This is what means by returns per rupee. If you are going to invest 1 rupee in wheat, you are going to get 2.22 rupees in return. If you are going to invest or buy the inputs worth of 1 rupees for rapeseed and mustard, you are going to get 1.5 rupees in the end. Okay, so while deciding which crop is better for the farmer in Hisar, he should be comparing all the possible alternatives and comparing their returns per rupee. Whichever crop has higher returns per rupee, he should choose that one. Okay, returns per rupee are synonymous with the comparative advantage. They give an idea about the comparative advantage. So this law helps us in selection of enterprises, which enterprises are going to give us the best returns per rupee, best bang for our buck, you can say. Also, this helps us understand why vegetables are cultivated more near big cities, because the prices are high there, because the transportation cost is low there, so naturally their returns per rupee is high. Okay, more prices means higher income. Paddy is cultivated in let's say low lying humid areas, because the irrigation cost is low there. Okay, and because the climate is congenial for their growth, climate is good for their growth, and plus the yield is higher there. Okay, the cost is less, yield is higher, that means their returns per rupee are going to be higher. Okay, sugarcane is cultivated near sugar factories. Why? Because the transportation cost is low, plus the prices are assured. So whatever they are going to grow, it is going to be purchased at assured prices. Plus this is the reason they are going to get more returns per rupee. Okay, sheep is reared more in, let's say, mountainous area for their wool. Because of the climate, their quality of their wool is good, quality of their meat is good. Okay, the rearing cost is less, because they are grazing for free grazing. Okay, so the climate is good for their health also. Plus the prices for those particular mountainous sheep wool is also high. Prices are high for that better quality wool, so their returns per rupees are higher. So this law also tells us Y also tells us about the cropping pattern, or let's say why there is the present cropping pattern uh, uh, is as it is. Okay, it gives us reasons. Okay, it gives us reasons that vegetables are more favored near big cities because because they earn better prices, their costs are lower. Okay, it tells us about the present situation. Now comes the time comparison principle. As you know, the investments are of two types. Okay, short term, let's say you're growing crops which are for 6 months to 1 year. 1 year of their cycle is this much only. If you want to if you want to know how much profit you're going to get, you just need to have an idea of the returns minus cost, and it is simple. It's fairly simple. The short term investments, if you want to know your profits, just subtract costs out of returns. But in terms of long term investments such as orchard, tube well, building, tractor, costs are today. You have to pay for them today. Returns will come over long period, let's say from 10 years to 20 years. Okay, so this cost of, let's say, 5 lakh you have spent on the tractor today, but it is going to give you income over a long period. So how you are going to, let's say it is going to give you income 1 lakh in the first year, 1 lakh in the second year, and later on up to 20 years it is going to give you each year 1 lakh rupees. So can you say the total income is simply 20 lakh minus 5 lakhs, that is equal to 15 lakhs are your profit? Actually no, this is not that simple, because the money, let's say we have today, and 100 rupee we'll be having in the future are not equal in the value. Because let's say 100 rupees buys you 2 to 3 kg vegetable, 2 to 3 kg of, let's say, bottle guard you today. Okay, this 100 rupees is after 10 years may be able to buy you only 1 kg bottle gun. Okay, why? Because of inflation. Inflation means consistent price rise over the years of different commodities. Because महंगाई बढ़ रही है लगातार, सो 100 रुपए की वैल्यू आज जो है और आगे जो होगी वो बराबर नहीं है. आई यूज टू बी हैप्पी इफ आई हैड ओनली 1 rupee. If I got only 1 or 2 rupees from my father, but I don't think you will be able to buy the things I used to get for 1 rupee, even for 10 rupees today. Okay, so the 1 rupee I used to have and the 10 rupees you have are equal. Okay, because of inflation. Plus the 100 rupee we are going to spend, let's say we are going to spend 1 lakh rupee or 1 lakh rupee in a tube well today. Instead of giving it spending it to the in the tube well, we can just lend it to somebody and earn rate of interest. Okay, so because our money earns rate of interest, plus because of inflation, the money we have today and the money we'll be having in the future are not equal at all. Okay, so how we should work out the profit for long term investments? Let's take an example. Let's say if you are having if you are trying to work out your profit for a guava orchard, 9 years of life, fruiting starts after 3 years. That means you will be getting money after 3 years. Cost incurred 1 lakh in first year because of planting, plus boundary, etc. Higher cost in the first year, then reducing up to 10th year. Okay, these are the costs you will be incurring over the 9 years of life of your guava orchard. And after third year, you will be starting to get some yield, higher, higher. Okay, you will be getting this money out of selling your yield, out of selling your output. Okay, so there are two ways of finding out profit and loss. Either what you can do is you can find out the value of these figures today, that means the present value of costs and benefits or returns. What is the present value of all the costs and benefits today? Okay, that present value means today's value. This can be done by discounting. either calculate present value of all the money spent and all the money earned by discounting. Okay, present value. This is the formula. This A is all these costs and returns. Okay, we have to calculate them individually. Or what can we do is we can calculate the value of these and these figures at the end of ninth year. That means future value of costs and benefits. This is called as compounding. The formula for discounting is present value of costs and returns. These are the costs and returns divided by 1 plus I. I is the interest rate that your money earns in let's say in the market. If you can lend the money, the market rate for loan, rate of interest for loan is 10%. Okay, and this n is the number of year we are talking about. Okay, and compounding, simple, future value of costs and benefits into 1 plus I divided to the power n. Okay, let's see it by calculation. Same example, rate of interest is 10% and 1 lakh that we spent in the first year for plantation and boundary, the present value of this 1 lakh is also 1 lakh. Okay, because in the very same year not going to earn any interest because you spent it today and its today's value is 1 lakh. Okay, the value of 30,000 you are going to spend in the next year today is 27,272. How? Present value of 30,000 is 30,000 divided by 1 plus 0.10 to the power 1. This is equal to 27272.73. Similarly, the value of 20,000 you are going to spend in the third year will be equal to 20,000 divided by 1 plus 0.10 to the power 2. Okay, here the power will n will be equal to 3, n will be equal to 4, n will be equal to 5 up to 8. Okay, so these are the present value of costs, and similarly you will be finding the present value of benefits, all of them. Okay, here the n is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the total of present value of benefits is equal to 3.35 lakhs. Okay, and total of present value of costs is equal to 1.65 lakhs. All right, so value of the total costs incurred in the 9 years and value of the returns that we are going to get in the 9 years is this much and this much. So the profit will be equal to present value of benefits minus present value of cost, that is equal to 1.69 lakhs. So this is how you can calculate the profit in long term investments. Okay, by either discounting, or you can do the same for compounding also. Okay, similar formulas. Now let's move on to the seventh principle, that is the cost principle, where we'll be understanding only a few concepts of costs. Cost function, that means total cost is a function of fixed cost that does not change with the level of output plus variable cost that does change with the level of output. Okay, so the total cost is also supposed to change with the level of output. Accounting costs that are paid out costs, that means they are paid in terms of cash. Economic costs include accounting costs plus cost of own resources. What are your own resources? The money you have, the machinery you have, the mind you have. Because if you would have used this money or machinery to lend it out to somebody, you would have got some money, and this mind also, you might have worked for somebody else, you might have got some wages, or let's say some rent for these things, or rate of interest for these things. So this is your own resource that you are let's say adding to your own enterprise. Economic profit means total revenue, that is output y into the prices of output minus these costs. Okay, opportunity cost of you, let's say you had two options, either taking BSc agriculture admission, and the second best option for you was earning 10,000 rupees wages by working somewhere, okay, per month. So for 4 years you studied agriculture, and for 4 years you might have earned 4.8 lakh rupees. So this 4.8 lakh rupees is the opportunity cost of your BSc agriculture program. So for a farmer point of view, the cost of next best alternative good that he could have produced with the same value of factors used. Let's say he had 20,000 rupees to spend on inputs. He chose to spend it on wheat. The second best option he had was rapeseed and mustard, where he could have earned a profit of 18,000 profit, I'm saying, and in wheat he could have a profit of 25,000. So that's why he chose wheat, and the opportunity cost of choosing wheat was 18,000 rupees. Next best alternative. Private cost is the cost borne by the producer. Let's say a tire manufacturer, he is manufacturing a tire. The cost of per tire is rupees 2,000. Social cost means when he is producing this tire, the private cost is 2,000, plus he is producing some smoke, because of which somebody got allergy and had to go to the doctor and spend 200 rupees on medicine. So the cost for society of the tire was 2,200 rupees. There are positive externalities also in agriculture also. Let's say somebody is rearing honeybees, they are giving free pollination to an orchard beside that area where these honeybees are being reared, honeybee farm. So free pollination services it is providing, which leads to increased yield, and the farmer who is getting increased yield is not paying anything to the farmer who is rearing honeybees. So this is positive externality. So the per kg cost of honey was the private cost of honey was, let's say, 200 rupees per kg, but it gave positive externalities, increased the yield of the orchard side near to that honeybee farm. Let's say the honeybees, the total number of honeybees that produced this much of kg of 1 kg of honey gave positive income, increase the yield of the orchard by rupees 200. So the actual cost, and not say that's 200, let's say it's 20, so the actual cost of honey was 180 rupees. In terms of positive externality, private cost minus something, and in terms of negative externality, private cost plus something. Positive externality, honeybees increasing the output of the orchard side by, that means private cost will be greater than social cost. In case of negative externality, private cost will be less than social cost. Okay. Short run, when a farm can increase their output by changing the variable factors only, seed, fertilizer, irrigation, etc. And in long run means more than 1 year, wherein a farmer can even change the fixed factors. Let's say he can buy more land, he can buy a tractor to increase the yield. Okay, so output can, in the long run output can be changed even by increasing the quantity of fixed factors. Short run output can be changed only by changing the quantity of variable factors. So these are the total cost curves. Total cost is equal to variable cost plus fixed cost. Variable cost behaves in this manner as the output increases. Okay, fixed cost is same irrespective of the level of output. It does not change with the level of output, it remains the same. It is parallel to, its graph is parallel to x-axis. This gap is equal to fixed cost, and this gap between total cost and fixed cost is equal to variable cost. Okay, now the average cost curves. First one is average fixed cost, which is total fixed cost per unit of output. Okay, as this does not change with the level of output, denominator if it going to increase, so average fixed cost will keep on decreasing, and its shape will be rectangular hyperbola. Okay, never touches x axis. Okay, now average variable cost, its graph is of U shape. As you can see here, it goes down first, reaches minimum point, and then goes up. Why does it happen? Let's see it by an example. Let's say somebody hired a labor who he is supposed to pay 300 rupees per day, and he is perfectly capable of cultivating 1 acre of crop, working on 1 acre of crop. Okay, but the farmer is asking him to work on lesser area. Okay, but he has to pay him the same quantity. Lesser area means lesser output. Okay, so the total variable cost by output is equal to average variable cost. Lesser area is synonymous with output. Okay, so 300 divided by 0.25, it is equal to 1200. If he increases, if he asks him to work more area, that means more output. Y will increase, then the TVC, average variable cost, will be equal to 600. Then again, if he asks him to cultivate 1 acre of land which he is perfectly able to, then the average variable cost will be minimum. Okay, because this much area he can cultivate, he cannot cultivate more than this. But let's say if the farmer asks him to do more work and cultivate 1.25 acres, what will happen? He will have to pay him something beside his wage. Let's say 200 rupees worth of liquor, or something he likes, non-veg or vegetarian, or maybe some sweets. So he'll have to pay for asking the worker to work more area than he is capable of. So the average variable cost will increase to 450. Now you can see it reduced from 1200 to 600 to 300, and then it again increased to 450. So this is why the average variable cost goes down, reaches minimum and goes up. Similarly, average total cost is equal to average fixed cost plus average variable cost. So it is also of U shape, goes down first because AVC and AFC both are falling. Okay, reaches minimum, then increases because AVC increases more than AFC is falling. Okay, this is why it increases. Now let's come to the marginal cost. This is change in total cost due to change in one more unit of change in output. That means additional cost incurred to produce additional output. How does it behave? It goes down first, then goes up, cuts the AVC and AC at minimum point and keeps on rising. Okay, so you can see there are many things here, many things to be understood. When marginal cost is below AVC and AC, what happens to average variable cost and average cost curve? AVC and AC are falling. When marginal cost curve is above these two, then these two are rising. You can see by this graph. And MC cuts AVC and AC at their minimum points. Understood? Now let's move on to the next slide, and probably the last one. This is just I want to show that and cost curves are product curves and cost curves are opposite in nature. As you can see that MC and AC, wait a second, marginal cost and average cost curves are exactly the opposite of reverse of marginal product and average product curves. Okay, when marginal cost or average cost curves are falling, marginal product and average product curves are rising. You can see in this portion. Okay, when marginal cost and average cost curves are rising, marginal product and average product curves are falling. You can see in this portion. Marginal cost curve cuts average cost at minimum. Marginal product cuts average product at maximum. So this is why I wanted to show you that these are exactly the opposite. And this is a universal relationship between marginal and average. It might be cost, it might be products or anything. Okay, let's see it by an example. Okay, now let's see by the help of the table that Ganguly, let's say if we had three different opportunities, or let's say these are three different players. In the first, second, and third match, Ganguly scored equal scores. 10, he was out on 10 in the score of 10. So the average score after the first match was 10, after the second match was also 10, and after the third match was also 10. As you can see, the additional scores are always equal to the marginal average scores. If he is scoring, the marginal scores are equal, marginal scores are all equal, then average will be also equal to the marginal ones. So this is the straight line. If all the marginal scores or additional scores are equal, not above, not below, so the average will also be equal to the marginal ones. The second player, let's say he scored in the first match 20, in the second match 50, third match 100. Okay, 20, 50, 100. So after the first match his average was 20, and after the second match his average was 35, and after the third match his average was 56.6. As you can see, when the marginal scores are increasing, that means the additional scores are increasing, the average is always below it. Okay, and let's say the third player, first match 50, second 20, third 10, then first match 50, second 20, third is 10, then the average score is 50, 35, and 26.6. When the marginal scores or additional scores are reducing, the average scores will always stay above them. So this is a universal relationship. Marginal, all the marginals are equal, then average is also equal to the marginal ones. If the marginal scores are increasing or marginal cost, marginal product is increasing, average will lie below it. When the marginal cost or product is reducing, average will lie above it. Okay, so now let's just keep it in concise and let's see what these seven farm principles of farm management tell us in brief. Principle of variable proportions: how much we should produce, how much output we should be targeting. The thumb rule is marginal cost. We should be adding more and more input until the point marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. Okay. Principle of substitution between inputs tells us the most efficient way to use our resources. That means to produce a given output at minimum possible cost. Okay. Principle of substitution between product tells us with given resources what combination of goods we should produce to get maximum revenue with given resources. So this is the important point. Principle of equi-marginal returns tells us where we should be investing our limited input, that the marginal return should be equal or nearly equal in all the choices we have, okay, of the last unit of resource. Principle of comparative advantage tells us what should be produced where, which area is most suitable for which type of enterprise. Okay. Time comparison principle helps us in understanding cost and returns of long-term investment, because 100 rupees today is not equal to 100 rupees tomorrow because of inflation, that is Mehngai, and because our money today earns, even if we don't invest it anywhere, it is going to earn us some interest. Okay, if we just lend it to somebody. Cost principle helps us in understanding different types of costs. So thank you very much. This will be all about unit second. And if you have any kinds of doubts, I'll be more than happy to clarify them. Thanks a lot.